has seen a service dog at one time or another out in the community. They're usually the dogs with the official looking vests that say something on them like, "Do not pet me, I'm working." And if you're like me, you may have wondered, how did this dog get to be a service dog? How do you train a dog to be a guide dog? And what does that entail? So I'm going to give you some basic facts about service dogs and how they are protected under the law and how they're only for people with disabilities. Service dogs are defined and regulated by the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. They require intensive training and must perform tasks related to the person's disability. Service dogs are defined differently from emotional support animals or therapy animals. The definition under the ADA is dogs that are individually trained to do work or perform tasks for people with disabilities. Service animals are working animals, not pets. The key that separates them from emotional support animals is that the tasks they are trained to do must be directly related to the person's disability. So an animal that is solely there to provide comfort or support is not considered a service animal. The ADA also protects the rights of the handlers of people with service dogs. For example, service dogs are allowed anywhere the public is allowed, and the staff at any business or agency cannot ask for documentation of the person's disability, and they cannot ask for identification or a training certificate or anything about the dog. Furthermore, if another person at the establishment has a dog allergy or if they have a fear of dogs, this is not considered a sufficient reason to bar entrance to a service animal. The only time a business can ask a service dog to leave is if it's causing a disturbance, if it's not sufficiently controlled by its handler, or if it is not housebroken. So have you ever wondered why service dogs are so calm and obedient? It actually mostly has to do with the selection criteria for which dogs they choose to train as service dogs. Very extensive temperament evaluations are done, and then even with these intensive screenings, about 50% of dogs actually drop out of service dog training because they can't make it. The most common breeds of service dogs are Labrador Retrievers and Golden Retrievers. However, there is no breed requirement for a service dog. It can be any type of dog. Service dogs in the USA do not require a specific training certification, but according to the International Association of Assistant Dog Partners, they should, for good practice reasons, at least meet the minimum requirements for training according to the international standard, which is at least 120 hours of schooling, 30 hours of which must be in different public spaces, different environments to work on the dog's social behaviors. Dogs must master basic obedience commands such as sit, down, stay, heel, and come, and they must be able to obey on the first command. Furthermore, they must have the following social behavior skills, and this is actually the hardest part of service dog training and where most dogs have to drop out. The dogs can have no aggressive behavior toward people or other animals. They can have no soliciting behaviors of food or attention from other people while on duty. They can have no sniffing or exploring behaviors. They must tolerate strange sights, sounds, and smells. They must be able to walk calmly on a leash, and they must not urinate or defecate unless on command. Finally, the dogs are trained in a task specific to their handler's disability. So the training process would be learn the basic obedience tasks, like I said, and then train on the social behavior things And if they pass all that, then they would learn the specific text, which you may be more familiar with, and of which I'm going to give some examples in just a little bit. And that is actually, according to dog trainers, one of the easiest things to train them in. So some examples of various tasks service dogs can perform. Some tasks are for people with physical disabilities, such as picking up and fetching things, opening and closing doors, turning on and off lights, being a counterbalance when someone falls down, protecting their handler during a seizure, or guiding the blind, or alerting the deaf to sounds. Service dogs can help people with mental illness. Something that's become more well-known is dogs that can interrupt anxiety attacks for people with post-traumatic stress disorder. They could remind their handler to take their medications on time. And they can also be trained to interrupt like obsessive compulsive behaviors. They can be trained to recognize and interrupt harmful or obsessive behaviors. Other special tasks a dog could be trained to do is alert their handler to the presence of an allergen. So there are dogs that can smell peanuts in anything, or for example. They could also calm a person with autism. That is considered a service dog task. Service dogs are really remarkable in the wide variety of tasks that they can assist with, which is why they can be so vital to people with disabilities. Service dogs help people with disabilities perform activities of daily living and are protected and regulated under the law. Hopefully you learned something about the many different things service dogs can do, and you'll be even more impressed when you see one next time. I'm worried I wasn't loud enough, which would be awful because I don't want to do that again.
That was actually really interesting.
Yeah, it was.